Yo, what's up guys? You got pokeaim here with a Pokemon Sword and Shield moveset video guide on how to use Obstagoon. Now Obstagoon is really interesting. Despite being like dark and normal, which is pretty bad defensively, it's really cool offensively. And I mean, it's not that terrible defensively, it just means you have that 4 times weakness to fighting. Obviously you have other weaknesses as well, but having that immunity to Ghost is pretty cool for Obstagoon. But this mon is interesting, and I say that because its stats just all around are pretty good. They're pretty solid. Base 93 HP, so it's decently bulky. Base 90 attack isn't the best, but having some abilities that help deal with that is pretty cool. 101 defense and 81 special defense is, you know, it's passable, especially with base 93 HP and base 95 speed. So, I don't know, it's like borderline between above average / average in this generation, or even just to be really good, just based on stats alone. But the cool thing about Obstagoon is the fact that it gets stab on knockoff, that it actually gets knockoff, and it has facade plus guts. And if you guys didn't know, guts is an ability that when you are status, it multiplies your attack times 1.5. It also ignores burn having your attack. So that's a pretty big one because this Pokemon can make access of Flame Orb. So the first set we're going to be talking about is probably the most standard set right now running around. And that's Flame Orb, Guts, Obstagoon with a Jolly Nature. And it's just running Facade. If you guys didn't know, Facade effectively becomes 140 base power if the user is statused. And, well, it's not status because sleep doesn't count for it. It's burn, poison, or paralyzed. And this is really cool because it's already stabbed. So this move just becomes incredibly strong on Obstagoon. We have Knockoff. Knockoff also is a move that gets stronger if your opponent has an item, but being stabbed is amazing. And then having close combat to deal with those dark types, to deal with those steel types is really, really nice. Now the last move is either Obstruct or Trick. Trick is interesting because you can cripple physical walls by giving them your Flame Orb. All you need to do is have the Flame Orb activated. Now you can, if you trick something, let's say you trick a Toxapex, right? Or an Appleton, right? And you take their leftovers, they get burnt. Not only are you canceling out the burn damage turn per turn from your own burn from the Flame Orb, but you're also wearing them down as well. Not to mention, they don't appreciate a Facade coming off from a Guts boosted Obstagoon. But the last move is up to you. Obstruct is a cool way to not only lower your opponent's defense, but also activate your Flame Orb. And again, Obstruct, when your opponent hits you with an attack, basically it lowers their defense harshly, if I'm not mistaken. So that's really good versus like physical offensive walls that can basically, it lowers them by -2, but that can basically try and damage you, and then you get the Flame Orb, then you're just going to be able to out damage them. So Obstruct is a really cool option. Again, Trick is good for crippling your opponent, but I think that's the most standard set of Obstagoon running around. The second set we have here is a Bulk Up set. Now, Bulk Up is basically decided by if you don't want to run Obstruct, it's option to use it more as a wall breaker than just a straight up beast. I want to say, because obviously Flame Orb has the direct damage, but Bulk Up, you're giving it another boost on top of that. But you can either run Leftovers or Flame Orb. Flame Orb obviously activating your Guts immediately, Leftovers for longevity, whereas you can switch this thing into status moves, maybe like a Scald from Toxapex even, or like a Will-O-Wisp from Rotom, so that'd be pretty cool. And Leftovers obviously giving you that longevity, but it's Bulk Up, Knockoff, Facade, and Close Combat. Close Combat giving you that option again versus them dark types that don't want to really be taking Facade, but mainly I think versus Pokemon like Ferrothorn as well, or if you're playing this thing in the lower tiers, in the UU, for instance, it's just a strong move for a Pokemon like Steelix, right? Or even Avalugg down there, right? So it's very, very strong in the UU tier, which is where Obstagoon has landed. And the fact that this Pokemon is faster than Pokemon like Como down there is amazing, and that it can check Pokemon like Mew is really cool. But just a standard set, Knockoff, Facade, Close Combat, and then just Bulk Up as an option with, you know, the ability between Flame Orb or the item between Flame Orb or Leftovers, depending on how you want to do it. Now the next set is interesting because I think it's kind of like stealing as a set from potentially a Lowland Persian. And basically the way a Lowland Persian used to work was that it was a fast taunter that can Parting Shot around, and Parting Shot basically, it's a sound move that gets you on out of there, and it lowers the target's attack and special attack by 1 stage, and you get to switch at the same time. So it's pretty cool, but Taunt can obviously be good for stopping setup, for stopping Stealth Rock, Spikes, hazards, or everything like that's defog as well. Knockoff is great as a support move, just getting rid of your opponent's item. And then the last move is either Low Kick or Facade. I don't think you want generally close combat on a more support Pokemon. I think Low Kick is better. It also does consistent damage to Pokemon like Steelix anyway, and Ferrothorn. And the Facade is there because this Pokemon is still running the Guts ability, so it can still be a status absorber, and if you are running Guts, as I mentioned on it, it allows you to just still hit incredibly hard off of a Pokemon without any attack investment either way. Now, the item is up to you. Leftovers provide longevity and, obviously turn per turn healing, whereas heavy duty boots are pretty cool because it means you can use this Pokemon and no matter what hazard is running around, no matter what hazards are up, Spikes, Stealth Rock, Sticky Web, Toxic Spikes, you're unaffected by it and it doesn't stop you from doing your job. So it's really a trade that's up to you. Do you want to heal turn per turn, or do you want to avoid hazards? And with this Pokemon being really fast, just a fast taunter, I think it's just so cool. Like being able to taunt Pokemon like Como from going for their Clanger's Soul, or just stopping setup and getting rid of items. It can be a really cool support Pokemon. In fact, I think this mon is really sick when it comes to like Draft League. I think this Pokemon could be really cool in Draft League just because of its insane amount of options. And do also keep in mind, like on bulk up sets, on like these type of sets, I think that the EV spreads are really dependent on the metagame, right? Like what is being ran. And like for example, Obstagoon doesn't have to run max speed. It doesn't, but at the moment, because the metagame is so fresh, this is what works the most right now. Obviously, speed time when opposing Obstagoon is really good. Now, the next set we have is an Assault Vest set, and this takes advantage of its high speed, its good HP, and its decent special defense. Now, the ability is either Guts or Defiant. If you guys also didn't know what Assault Vest does, it gives you 1.5 times a special defense boost, but you can't use anything that are not attacking moves. So, which is why it has all attacking moves, but Guts or Defiant. Guts obviously makes you a better status absorber, and I think that's just better in general. Again, being able to switch it on Will-O-Wisp, being able to not care about poison, being able to get paralyzed and get stronger. Really nice for this Pokemon. Defiant is interesting because of Intimidate and because of like Sticky Web. I believe Sticky Web still raise your... Still raise... I mean, it just drops. Every drop, right? Any drop is really cool because this Pokemon will be able to boost its attack from there. So... it's really a trade up to you. I personally like Guts because you can just throw this thing in on weaker special attacks or weaker status moves. But it really is up to you if you want to try to find it as well. This Pokemon has like 3 great abilities, but I think Guts is just the superior one. But set is knockoff close combat Gunk Shot, and the reason we have Gunk Shot is because we can actually live a Dazzling Gleam from a +1 Alcremie, which is something that's in the tier. And Gunk Shot gives us a nice way to 2-hit KO physically defensive Alcremie. It's really strong. The last move is either Facade or Body Slam. I think Body Slam is really dependent on if you are running either Guts or Defiant itself. Facade is good if you're running Guts, whereas Body Slam is just consistent. I think it's better with Defiant as well because you can get that 30% chance to paralyze your opponent. So using this as some more support. But an offensive supporting mon. So that's something you could do. It really is up to you. Next set we have is taking advantage of Obstagoon's Reckless ability, and Reckless basically makes moves that have recoil hit harder. So we have a Choice Band Obstagoon. Now, for the most part, Choice Band and Guts obviously making Facade stronger and things like that, and Choice Band in general just making your moves. Basically, having a Guts boost and having a Choice Band is the exact same thing, right? The only plus is that if you have Guts and you have Facade and you're burnt, your move is stronger than, a Choice Band Facade, obviously. But, with Reckless. But, cool thing is that Guts boosted Facade is actually just slightly weaker than a Reckless Double Edge with Choice Band, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's like 2% weaker or something like that. If my calculation wasn't right. It's like it is like, I know that, that Abomasnow on the damage calculator that takes every hit in the game from everything. I think it takes like 104% minimum from like a Facade Guts boosted, whereas Obstagoon's Reckless Double Edge does like 107% minimum. So it's slightly there and it's slightly stronger, but the rest of the moves are obviously weaker. Or around there. But yeah, anyway, Double Edge, Knockoff, Close Combat, and Parting Shot. Again, Parting Shot is pretty cool on the Choice Band, so I think Trick could potentially be an option too, but I like Parting Shot just for sort of supporting the team. And this is just an idea if you want to try and use Obstagoon with the Reckless ability and just throw off stronger Double Edges. Very strong, you can get that initial power. You don't have to worry about a Flame Orb activating, you don't have to worry about getting this Pokemon in safely to get that Flame Orb activated to get your Guts, but just throwing off some Reckless attacks. And the last set we have is a Choice Scarf set. And this takes advantage of Obstagoon's pretty high speed at base 95. 317 speed is really nice. And also, again, you can use either Guts or Defiant. Defiant, obviously, you don't care about Intimidate, so you'll be able to spam moves. Guts, you guys already know why Guts is good at this point. But Jolly Nature, again, the EV spreads are really, really, really simple and really, they stay the same on this. But if you're running Guts, run Facade. If you're not running Guts, I'd run Body Slam. Again, the 30% chance to paralyze versus if you get Status, the stronger move. Knockoff, and then the next move is Switcheroo. It could be Trick or Switcheroo. I wanted to include both of them. They're the exact same thing. And last move can either be Close Combat or Parting Shot. If you use Parting Shot, you can better support your teammates, and it can be really cool. I think Scarf Alolan Persian was something that was actually ran at one point with like Foul Play, Parting Shot running around. But Close Combat obviously giving you a stronger move versus Pokemon. Like if you're using in higher tiers, maybe like Hydreigon, but also just good, again, versus those Steel types. But that's basically what I have for Obstagoon. And this is a Pokemon that kind of like appreciates Sticky Web support, I think. I've been using it on Battle Spot singles with Sticky Web. I've been using it in UU with Sticky Web, so it's really nice with that. It's just a really strong breaker. And it's actually a really good Dynamax Pokemon too, just because it's so bulky all around. So doubling that HP is really, really nice. So this thing will surprisingly live like, close combats when Dynamax, but then again, Dynamax is broken. But just being able to up your attack as well by using Max Knuckle. Close combat translates to Max Knuckle, and then, or transforms rather, into Max Knuckle. And then just having a move like, I think the coolest thing is that your normal move becomes a max move that lowers the speed of your opponent while doing damage. So I think that's really sick as well. But in terms of dealing with this Pokemon, obviously mons that don't care about Sticky Web are really nice. Like, an offensive Hydreigon is pretty nasty. Lucario can use Vacuum Wave if you're playing in the U tier. Avalog is something that can just shrug off a hit and go for Body Press. But yeah, overall, very fun Pokemon. I'm excited to show it off later. Thank you everybody for watching. Hope you guys all enjoyed. Leave a like if you did, and feel free to subscribe. Obviously helping me out. And yeah, I'll see you guys later today with an Obstagoon video on Battle Spot as well as an Obstagoon Showdown Live.